Okay, we are going to start now. So welcome again to our webinar today. My name is Cecilia Allen. I work with Gaia and I'll be your host for today. The webinar we have today is about zero waste implementation. We had a webinar a few weeks back where we talked about what zero waste is, what are the pillars of zero waste. And today we're going to dive into how zero waste is being implemented in different contexts, in different cities of the world. Zero waste, as you already may know, it's a vision, it's an action plan, it's a goal, but it's not a one-size-fits-all recipe. It's not happening the same everywhere. So we're going to see how different cities, how different contexts implement the zero waste philosophy, the zero waste goal worldwide. And the idea is to get ideas of how can zero waste be adapted, how can zero waste be thought from a bottom-up perspective, from a community's perspective, from very different contexts. So we have today a wonderful panel of speakers. I'm going to introduce them. We have Mico Alinho. Mico is Gaia's Zero Waste Program Associate for the Gaia Asia Pacific Office. He's based in Quezon City. He has worked with different development and environmental organizations in the past 10 years, focusing on urban poor and climate change issues. And currently, Mico is working side by side with cities and communities from Asia Pacific implementing zero waste plans and designing zero waste plans. We also have Enzo Favorino. Enzo is with Scuola Agraria del Parco di Monza, a nonprofit research center based in northern Italy. Hello, Enzo. He and his team work across Europe in scientific and technical issues related to optimization of schemes for separate collection, definition and implementation of zero waste programs, and composting and aerobic digestion and sustainable management of residual waste. He also provides support to the European Commission and other EU institutions about waste management and resource management. And so was co-founder of the European Compost Network and member of the Scientific Committee of ANPA, which is the Italian Environmental Protection Agency. And he also served as chair of the work group on biological treatment of the International Solid Waste Association. And currently we have the honor of having him be the chair of the Scientific Committee for Zero Waste Europe. And he's also a board member of the Zero Waste International Alliance and a lead expert on the knowledge team for Let's Do It World. And we also have Sophia Owen. Sophia is a Toxics Action Center's attorney and the community organizer for Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island. She's based in the US. She provides organizing assistance and works to build power to address environmental racism, settler colonialism, and other systemic barriers that disproportionately affect communities on the front lines of pollution. She also worked as a trial attorney for the Committee for Public Counsel Service in Lawrence. She has a JD from Northwestern University School of Law and a master's in environmental law and policy from Vermont New School. So we have three wonderful people who are working in the communities with the cities implementing zero waste. So it's going to be a wonderful webinar today. And before we move into the presentations, let me tell you a little bit of the dynamics of the webinar for today. The idea is to have first the three presentations, and then we will have plenty of time to have questions and answers. You will see in your screen that you have a Q&A box. So we're going to ask everyone to type all your questions in that box so we address them after the presentations. And also you will see that there's a chat box. And we ask you to use the chat box to introduce yourself, maybe share some information about the matter that we're talking about today, and ask any question related to technical problems. If you have any technical problems, just put just type there, and our colleague Gemma will assist you on that. So, and the other thing that I need to mention is that people are silenced in order to avoid any background noise. So we ask you to use those two boxes to communicate with everyone. Another thing that I have to tell you is that we are going to send you, after the webinar, we're going to send you the recording of the webinar and the slides. So you will have that with you after the presentations. So I think that's about it with the structure of the webinar, and I'm going to hand it over to the first speaker, which is who is Miko. So Miko, on to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is Miko from the Philippines, and for this evening or in your morning, so I'll share some examples from the Asia Pacific region on how zero waste programs are being implemented in cities and communities. Provide a recap about how zero waste, what are actually the components of zero waste. So for those of you who have attended the Zero Waste 101 webinar, so we had Paul Connet show you some steps. Of course, these are could be customized or localized based on the context of the city or the community. But you'll see in different examples that some of these elements are being applied. Some are in a way more advanced compared to the others. But I guess the idea here is having that level of commitment from local governments and stakeholders implementing the zero waste program. So my first case would be San Fernando in the Philippines. So just a little bit of background in the Philippines. So we're fortunate that the country has a national law that mandates sorting of waste, which in a way encourages cities and communities to segregate their waste at source. Unfortunately, even though the law has been in place for the past 20 years, we only have a handful of cities that are doing it. And I guess one of the examples that we've been showing for quite some time is this city 2 hours north of Manila. So San Fernando, like other cities, actually started with a waste problem. Their landfills getting congested. They decided to explore a waste to energy plan, but eventually they decided to partner with one of our Gaia members, Mother Earth Foundation, to introduce zero waste program in the city. And as a result, they were able to improve waste diversion rates. When they started from 2012, it was just 12%. And as of last year, they were able to achieve 8%. And we've also have a plastic bag ban, which enjoys a 95% compliance rate among residents. In the Philippines, barangays or villages are required or mandated to have an MRF or materials recovery facility, and they exceed that requirement. Most of the barangays have multiple MRFs. Some are located in schools, some are located in government offices and businesses. And one of the, I guess, best things about this city or this example is the recognition for waste workers. They have a waste workers association. Most of them are part of the formal structure. So most of them are hired by the local government as waste workers. And their representative or their association president sits at the solid waste management committee of the city. So that committee helps decide or plan waste management issues for the city. So having that representation says a lot for providing that support for waste workers. Here's a diagram of how San Fernando does their waste management. So it's really about decentralizing collection and identifying different stakeholders who take on each material or type of waste. So in this case, you see the household doing the sorting at source, and you have villages or barangays doing the further sorting, at least for processing organic waste into compost, and partnering with local junk shops or recyclers for recyclable materials. And residuals, on the other hand, they're being handled by the city government, which goes to landfill. And I guess the importance of having a model in the Philippines is be able to organize or host study tours. So this is a picture of different stakeholders from other governments or other cities rather. So they're invited to visit San Fernando and see how the zero waste program is being implemented in the city. Another example, which actually followed suit after the San Fernando experience, we have Tacloban in the Philippines. So Tacloban, about more than 5 years ago, was hit by Typhoon Haiyan. So it was severely devastated, and at the same time was having problems with waste management. Some site was it's very congested, in addition to the debris that came from the typhoon. And they decided to partner with Mother Earth Foundation as well. 2 years ago, they adopted the Zero Waste program. And like San Fernando, it was a gradual introduction of decentralized collection. So far, they're actually committed to introducing this program to all barangays or the whole city. But so far, they're about 40% complete, but they're hoping to finish all barangays in the next 2 years. And the good thing about this example is they were able to improve waste collection from 30% to 100% of all households. Before introducing zero waste program, their resources for waste management collection was sold in the city. And because of introducing this program, they were able to make it more cost effective for the city. So they were able, with the same budget, they were able to capture 100% of the waste, and at the same time maximize the lifespan of their sanitary landfill, which just opened this year. And and Tacloban so far is committed to continuing this program. So they just announced late last year that they're investing $80,000 US to continue the zero waste work. Another example from the Philippines is Potrero. Potrero is a barangay or village in Malabon. Malabon is one of the cities inside Metro Manila. And the remarkable thing about Malabon is it's typical example of a urban community and how it's able to adopt a high diversion rate just after a year of introducing zero waste program. Another good thing about Potrero is they also take care of their waste workers. Aside from the regular salaries, they provide healthcare benefits. They provide some subsidies for scholarship for some dependents, and they also provide support for insurance and other social benefits. And the work in Potero has inspired neighboring barangays in that city to go zero waste. So this city is now working on the whole of the city or whole of Malabon, which covers 27 barangays or villages. And after Philippines, of course, we do have examples in India. And I guess one of the best examples is Pune. And Pune is known for its cooperative for this union of waste pickers. It's called KKPKP. And we've been successful in organizing more than 3,500 waste workers. So instead of getting a fleet of trucks or company that hauls waste, have a network of waste pickers that are actually acquiring a service contract with the local government to handle a door-to-door collection system for waste. And because of that, they were able to save a lot of money and at the same time do source separation of waste per household level. Another example in India is in Trivandrum, in the state of Kerala. And Trivandrum is, or Kerala, is also known for applying this this principle called the Green Protocol. The Green Protocol is a policy applied in public events. Like about Green Protocol is they're not really saying that it's pure zero waste, but somehow it promotes governments and event organizers to use reusable utensils or skipping disposables every time you have elections, government meetings, or even weddings. They've applied Green Protocol even in festivals where at least that helped divert a lot of waste compared to the previous years. Trivandrum is also known for its network of mentors and youth volunteers that are promoting zero waste around the city. It's called the Green Army. And in terms of their decentralized production, they have introduced some tools to help residents locate MRFs or composting facilities. They have this app called Smart Trivandrum, which provides that opportunity for residents to look for the nearest MRF and at least provide that support for residents that are already doing segregation. And another example we have is in Bandung, Indonesia. So in Bandung, it's not as, I guess, as widespread as our examples in India or in the Philippines, but they're doing a good start for their work. And they've been doing great in terms of replicating the work in 6 or 8 pilot villages on decentralized collection. And at least so far in these pilot areas, they were able to achieve 80% compliance rate. So that means 8% of households are doing outdoors segregation. And to actually support that work, the city actually invested in an educational campaign. So they call it Kang Pisman. So Kang Pisman is on the word Pisman, or in English Pisman, which is very popular in India, and in Indonesia rather. In another example is in Kamikatsu, at least for a lot of people that are reading about zero waste. We've seen a lot of articles about this small town in Japan, and 51% waste diversion. And I think the most visual example of sorting is this one, because they have 45 categories for sorting, which helps increase diversion and also provide that market for high value materials. They also have what they call a circular shop. So the circular shop, for example, you're a resident that has spare utensils or tableware, you can just give it away to the circular shop, and this one aggregates all donated materials and they lend them to people who might need them for parties or special events. We do have a lot of examples in the region, and hopefully we do see more of them in the next 2-3 years. And one of the most remarkable is in Chennai. So they recently partnered with a Gaia member in India with CAG to introduce zero waste in the whole city. So we're hoping that this becomes a big project in that area of Asia Pacific region. And other examples are hoping other zero waste potential cities in Indonesia, in Bali, in Malaysia, several in the Philippines, and also in Vietnam. And I guess before I end, here just some of the partners that have been instrumental in our work. So these groups have been helping cities realize the benefits of zero waste in their respective jurisdictions. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Miko, for that presentation. I think it's very inspiring to see how different communities in Asia are moving forward with zero waste, with their own set of plans, with their own thinking, with their own context, and especially because we're seeing so much export of false solutions like incineration that are promoted by maybe European or US companies into countries that have other contexts, other idiosyncrasies. So it's great to see that the communities in Asia are doing their own models and their own thinking about waste. So thank you for that. And we're going to move on to Enzo, our next speaker. And Enzo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Very well.
That's great. I'm very happy to be invited, and I'm very happy to be in this webinar. I've already seen the list of the attendees, and I can see there's so many good friends online, such as Sonia Mendoza, Anna Le from Tanzania, Evelyn from Austria. And so I'm very, very happy to be here and sharing with you. Okay, let me start my presentation. Okay, zero waste in Europe, zero waste in Europe. First of all, let me set the scene. Zero waste in Europe is being now pushed, or at least we have an opportunity to push zero waste programs thanks to the recently approved circular economy package. Europe adopted last year a consistent set of regulations, including very ambitious material recovery targets. Europe has to meet 65% net material recovery by 2035. Getting to 65% net material recovery implies getting to something between 75 and 80% separate collection by 2035. And there is an increasing awareness that zero waste is providing the perfect toolkit for such programs, for such strategies. Enough so that the first circular economy package, which was issued in July 2014, was subtitled A Zero Waste Program for Europe. And this was capturing the spirit of zero waste, keeping the materials in their highest and best status, which is basically the operational translation of the principles included in the circular economy package. Commissioner Vella, which is the European Minister for the Environment, still for a few months to go, because now we just had the European elections, and so we are waiting for the new commission to step in. But anyway, in 2016, he himself made reference to zero waste schemes. See these as Capannori, Treviso, Parma. We mentioned a few of them during the presentation as the living examples of operational implementation of the principles tabled in the circular economy package. So you understand that zero waste is going mainstream. It's becoming very, very sexy, but we need to exert a control because this brings along many opportunities, but also a few threats for hijacking of the true spirit of zero waste and something like that. And this is one of the duties of Zero Waste Europe. Zero Waste Europe is a network of networks. For the moment, we have got 31 national and regional networks who are members of, official members of Zero Waste Europe, plus 4 aspirant members. We have got a very good coverage of Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Central Eastern Europe, Western Europe. And so we have got a diversified set of conditions. We are working on the top-down strategies. We try to influence European policymaking on waste and resources in order to establish a consistent framework of conditions to make it possible. But also we are promoting bottom-up zero waste local schemes, above all working with municipalities, with cities to make it happen. We want to empower communities to rethink their relationships with the management of resources. This is the true spirit of zero waste, and this is what we call our mission and vision. And also working on local schemes for zero waste, we may collect evidence on viability of zero waste strategies. Enough so that while the European Commission was working on the ambitious targets of the circular economy package, when they were a little bit in troubles because some of the stakeholders were challenging them, saying, but do you consider it achievable 65% net material recovery? We were able to provide evidence that it was doable, viable, because we had already hundreds of zero waste schemes which were proving operational viability of the system. Of course, we also try to promote new business models which may implement the vision and the mission of zero waste strategies. And sometimes we also promote zero waste lifestyles, zero waste families, above all in those areas where the municipalities have no jurisdictional power or little jurisdictional power to make decisions on implementation of the zero waste principles. So in those cases, if we can't influence decisions on separate collection, for instance, at least we try to promote zero waste lifestyles and zero waste families. This all started in Capannori. Capannori was the first zero waste municipality in Europe back in 2007. This was pushed upon the initiative by Rossano Ercolini, who is this nice guy. He's a primary school teacher. He's with his pupils in this picture. He was awarded the Goldman Prize in 2013. So he's one of the zero waste heroes, of course, worldwide. Capannori is a municipality totaling a population of 45,000 people. And for the moment, they are around 85% separate collection. But the most important is that residual waste has been minimized to 60 kilograms per inhabitant and year, which has to be compared with the average European production of municipal solid waste, which is 500 kilograms per inhabitant and year. So the result is remarkable. But in Capannori itself, they are also promoting now a zero waste families programs. They have got more than 100 families which committed to advanced, thoughtful behavioral change. And they went down to 3 kilograms per inhabitant and year. So you understand the importance to be working both on zero waste municipalities in order to cover as many households as possible, but also on the advanced families, because we say they are benchmarking our future, how far we may go with zero waste programs. We have mapped our zero waste municipalities. We have got a dedicated website, which is zerowastecities.eu. For the moment, we have got 400 municipalities adopting a formal zero waste scheme. We have got zero waste strongholds, above all, in such countries as Slovenia, Italy, Spain, Hungary. A few days ago, we had the first zero waste municipality adopting a formal zero waste commitment in Bulgaria, Svilingrad, which is a comparatively big city, important city in Bulgaria. So we are happy about that. But basically, the conditions we consider in order to be recognized as a municipality working towards the zero waste is a formal adoption of a zero waste commitment. This has to include firm and verifiable operational steps, such as implementation of curbside collection, reuse centers, the establishment of a local zero waste board, which has to monitor the program, but above all, the commitment to keep improving from time to time. Because as we say in Europe, zero wasters are always happy and never satisfied, which is the European translation of zero waste is the journey more than the destination. So we have to keep committed to improving from time to time. The basic zero waste work program for our municipalities includes a few basic elements, which are curbside collection, the waste prevention practices, which may be adopted already at the local level, such as home composting, promotion of washable nappies instead of the one-way nappies, the packaging-free shops, and so on and so forth. Pay-as-you-throw systems. I will share with you something about the importance of pay-as-you-throw systems in order to make the next big leap towards zero waste. And then the monitoring programs on the composition of residual waste in order to understand what's left behind in residual waste and to understand what we may do in order to improve further, may be also influencing the industrial redesigning of those materials and items which are hard to reuse and recycle. By doing that, our municipalities are walking the talk, going towards zero waste. For instance, this is our zero waste champion district, one of our zero waste champion districts, the district Contarina, which is totaling 50 municipalities, 550,000 people, and they are already at 86% separate collection. But most importantly, they are minimizing residual waste. They went down to 50 kilograms, roughly 50 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste. But since they are committed to keep working towards zero waste, they've already defined a midterm goal to further reduce their residual waste by 80% by 2023. So by 2023, they want to go down to 10 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste going to disposal. The best part in the zero waste programs is that we detect no increase in the total cost of waste management. Actually, our zero waste municipalities, at least in Western Europe, are typically decreasing the cost which is transferred to the taxpayers, just because landfilling and incineration in Western Europe is hell expensive. And therefore, the more you recycle, the more you reduce, the more you reuse, the more you save. But the best part is the evidence related to occupational implications, because you can see in a city as Treviso, with a population of roughly 80,000 people, they introduced a zero waste scheme. They went up to 85% separate collection. They slightly reduced the unit cost per person in waste management, and they increased the number of employees from 58 to 84 employees. So they are turning disposal costs into new wages, which is the best part in zero waste schemes. I already drew your attention to the importance of including the organics. We know the organics are of paramount importance, and their importance is twofold. First of all, we have got a quantitative importance of organics because they are the largest contributor to high recycling rates. This is even more important outside Europe because the percentage of organics, when I was working, for instance, in Cambodia, I was detecting 70 to 80% organics in municipal solid waste. But also inside Europe, still we have got, depending on situations, between 30 and 60% organics in municipal solid waste. But also we have got an operational importance of organics because once you take the organics out, you have got a much less fermentable residual waste. Therefore, you may sharply reduce the collection frequency for residual waste. And this, first of all, exerts a cost optimization in the system as a whole, but also it exerts a further driving effect for better separation of plastics, glass, metals, paper, whatever. We have got systems in order to try and optimize the separate collection system for the organics. We try to make the system as comfortable and clean as possible. Many zero waste schemes are considering the use of the compostable bags or paper bags in order to make the system user-friendly. This made the system viable also in large cities. For the moment, one big example is the city of Milan. The city of Milan did not commit formally to a zero waste program yet, but it is a very good example when it comes to separate collection of organics. And you can see that they have got an overall capture of organics of roughly 87% of the organics, which is a very good performance, a very good achievement, and shows that separate collection systems for organics may be implemented also in the densely populated city centers. We have got a national capital which already formally committed to zero waste programs, Ljubljana. This is the national capital of Slovenia. Ljubljana totals a population of 350,000 people, roughly. We convinced them back in 2014 to drop the plans to build an incinerator and to go instead for the zero waste route. They formally committed to zero waste programs, and now they are getting highlighted in all the mainstream media. This was the Guardian reporting on Ljubljana. Ljubljana for the moment is already at 68% separate collection, and with an amount of residual waste which is 115 kilograms per person and year. But since we are always happy and never satisfied, that they have already planned the mid and long-term goals, such as 78% and 80% recycling rate by 2035, the amount of residual waste going down to 60 kilograms per person and year by 2025, and going further down to 50 kilograms by 2035. Of course, in order to achieve those goals, they keep working on waste prevention programs. This is, for instance, the campaign, the official public campaign against food wastage. And they were showing that on the average, each inhabitant from Ljubljana was throwing 82 kilograms of food scraps into the bin. Of course, there's much to be recovered from that, preventing food wastage. But also they are working on reuse centers, on waste reduction, and so on and so forth. Packaging-free shops, they are also promoting packaging-free shops, and so on and so forth. I was telling you about the importance of pay-as-you-throw systems. This is the system which has been adopted in Parma, which is another remarkable zero-waste example from Southern Europe. They have got tagged bins, buckets, or bags with a radio frequency tag which detects every time a household is setting out residual waste. By doing that, they have established a rewarding scheme for those households who behave, of course, and this is exerting a further driving effect. There are more simple systems such as a prepaid bag, which is being adopted in other zero waste systems. But you can see in a city like Parma, which totals a population of roughly 200,000 people, they are already at 80% separate collection. This is driving down the total amount of residual waste. They are already around 100 kilograms per inhabitant and year. And of course, this is increasing the percentages of recyclables and compostables, such as garden waste, organic waste, plastics, metals, cardboard, paper, and so on and so forth. The importance of waste audits on residual waste. This is a very nice picture. And we have got both Rossano Ercolini. This one is Paul Connet taking part in one of our waste audits in Capannori. So we may see what's showing up to be the most frequent items in our residual waste, and we may influence industrial redesigning, for instance, of the coffee capsules, or we may promote new business models, for instance, with the cloth nappies. When we promote the cloth nappies, we know that the main barrier to widespread adoption of cloth nappies is behavioral change. Many of the persons do not have the time or do not have the will to wash the nappies. So, for instance, we have promoted new business models, such as the Lavanda scheme in Bologna. They are a cooperative, they are employing disadvantaged people, and they are basically servicing households, renting the cloth nappies, picking the dirty nappies, and delivering the clean nappies back to the households participating in the scheme. And this is working flawlessly and in a beautiful way, helping us working towards zero waste. So let me go towards the end, talking about statistics. I already told you zero waste schemes are going widespread here and there across Europe. We have got particularly good results where the zero waste schemes have been adopted in a more consistent way, such as Italy, Catalonia in Spain, Slovenia. These are some of the results from Italy in 2017, official results as reported by the National Environmental Protection Agency. You can see we have got 40 provinces. The provinces are the planning unit in Italy. Out of a total of 108 provinces, above 65%. But when it comes to point results of the single municipalities, we have got roughly 3,000 municipalities above 70%, roughly 1,000 municipalities above 80%. We even have more than 100 municipalities above 90% separate collection. So it's not yet zero, but we are then close to zero. The new matrix is the minimized residual waste amount per person and year, because we want to adopt metrics which keep together the efforts on separate collection and the efforts on waste reduction. Unfortunately, the separate collection rates do not capture the progresses on waste reduction, whereas minimization of residual waste does. So we had in 2017, 510 municipalities below 75 kilos, many below 50 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste, and the lowest ones around 20 kilograms per inhabitant and year. But let me put some icing on the cake with the last info I want to share with you. Because sometimes incineration is being touted as the best way to minimize landfilling. Well, actually, we have got evidence which goes against it. But above all, we have got evidence of the lock-in effect which incineration is causing in many situations across Europe. Consider Slovenia, which we already highlighted as one of the zero waste strongholds in Europe. Just a few years ago, in 2012, their recycling rate was roughly 40%. You can see the clean part of the bars, recycling and composting, roughly 40%. Since you can see the purple part of the bar is the reliance on incineration, which is very low in Slovenia, whereas other countries such as Germany, Netherlands, Austria, they had higher recycling rates, but also a higher reliance on incineration. This is why the recycling rates have basically been stagnating in those countries in the last few years, whereas Slovenia is improving more and more year on year. And already in 2016, the recycling rate in Slovenia was around 60%. So Slovenia is now jumping on top of the international rankings when it comes to recycling, just because it's a country which is basically driven by zero waste schemes. Already in 2017, Slovenia should have overcome Germany. It already went over Austria and Germany and Belgium and the Netherlands. So now we are changing the narrative in Europe. We know that those countries with little or no reliance on incineration and with a full reliance on zero waste schemes are fully deploying the potential of circular economy. So with that being said, I'm done. This is a very intriguing and inspiring picture because it is showing the amount of residual waste which was produced by some of our zero waste champions, as Linda Maggiori, with zero waste lifestyles. They may go even further down to as little as 300 grams residual waste per inhabitant and year. And that's damn close to zero. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Enzo, very much for this. And I think it's great to know which are the new good models in Europe in terms of resource management and update us and know where to look at when looking for models in Europe in terms of zero waste. So thank you for that presentation. And we will be sending more information to everyone in a further email. So the link with the information you just mentioned. And before we move on to our next speaker, let me remind you that if you have any questions for any of the speakers, you can use the Q&A box that you will see on your screen. So please share any questions you may have there. And now we're moving on to Sophia Owen. She will share experiences about zero waste implementation and promotion in the US. Sophia?
Thanks, Ceci. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So, whoops, nope. Hit the wrong button. Okay. So my name is Sophia. I'm with Toxics Action Center, which is a nonprofit that does community organizing in the Northeast in the US. So I'm going to share specifically about our experience working in Vermont, and then a little bit about Zero Waste Boston, which is a coalition that Gaia is a part of and has been involved with for over 10 years. So in the US, we're working on these issues because, as everyone I think on this webinar knows, all landfills will leak, and incineration is just landfilling into the air. So at Toxics Action Center, we're working with communities to move towards zero waste. And what this has looked like in Vermont is closing down a lot of landfills that are not lined and that are run by municipalities and are polluting the rivers and streams in Vermont. We're also trying to make sure that this problem isn't shipped to other places, other states or other countries. As I think probably most folks know, a lot of our recyclables have been shipped to China, and we've hit a point where that's no longer going to be possible. And so what we've learned is that landfills create very few jobs in comparison to zero waste, and so we're moving in that direction. Thankfully in Vermont, universal recycling law was passed unanimously in 2012, which is Act 148. And so this was passed in 2012 in response to the fact that the state's recycling rate was at about 30 or 36% for almost 20 years. And as much as 50%, as you can see from the graphic, of Vermonters' trash includes recyclable and compostable materials like paper, food scraps, and leaf and yard debris. And with concerns over wasting natural resources and also the impacts on climate change, the stage was really set for Vermont to take the lead on this issue. So the goals of the universal recycling law were to decrease waste disposal and increase recycling and composting, to protect the environment and conserve natural resources and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide consistent and convenient recycling and composting services statewide, and to incentivize investment in recycling, food donation, and organics diversion, which already was a big part of Vermont's economy. For those who aren't familiar with the US, Vermont is a much more rural state, so there have been some challenges around how to manage trash. They do have the space for landfills, but that's not, the most effective way to manage our waste. So with this, the passage of this law, it really helps to move toward a zero waste economy in a way that a lot of other states have not done. There have been really strong efforts in a lot of cities, but this is a different scale in that it's the whole state. So the law, in its simplest terms, really emphasizes recycling and organics being removed from the waste stream. So there are recycling and composting services that are available to folks much more easily than they were before. There are pay-as-you-throw programs, which is was explained by Enzo, is that you are responsible for paying a fee for the amount that you are landfilling, and there is recycling in public spaces. So the good news is that in over the last few years, trash disposal has decreased and recycling and composting have increased. So we know that with zero waste, one size doesn't fit all. And one of the things that happened in Vermont was that the haulers who are actually taking the waste can request an exemption from collecting recyclables, leaf and yard debris, and food scraps by working with their local solid waste management facilities. And there are some ways that they can work around some of these new policies, but the goal is to give folks time to sort of figure out how to move towards actually getting to zero waste. So right now, the transfer stations and haulers do collect recyclables, and there are recycling services at all of at all transfer stations and landfills. So there has been a lot of work that the state agency has had to do to make sure that folks are following the rules. But one bright spot is that when one town, the town of Vernon, switched to a pay-as-you-throw policy, recycling jumped almost 50%, and the volume of trash was cut in half. So we're really hopeful that as more people become familiar with these policies and understand what they really mean, that we will see rates jump even more. So another bright spot is that more Vermonters have access to recycling and to composting. So in June of 2014, letters were sent out to all of the towns in Vermont outlining the requirements for universal recycling, including for public spaces. For example, that as you see on the screen, that recycling be paired with trash cans in public spaces. And so you can now, for example, this is in the town of Barrie, you can see the recycling bins wherever there are trash bins. And even in places like the Northeast Kingdom, which is a very rural area, folks are able to compost at home and then drop it off. Another bright spot has been that food donations have grown by nearly 40% in the last few years. So the Vermont Food Bank in 2015 said that they received an increase of 25 to 30% in food donations because of this recycling law. And it actually grew another 40% in 2016, but also lots more fresh foods are actually making their way to the tables of folks who are less food secure. So that's also a really big victory. And they, a lot of the organizations that depend on food donations are having to spend a lot less purchasing food to make up for the difference in what they are receiving in donations. And we know that what isn't donated can now be composted or is going to anaerobic digesters. So that's also a big victory. Another way that we've seen success is that kids in schools are teaching their parents about zero waste. There, as you can see from this photo, it's kids who are learning about composting. And we know when children bring that knowledge home to their parents and really are excited about composting at home, that it inspires parents not only to do this in their homes, but to learn more about other policies, which is very exciting. So one of the challenges was with implementation was that there was not a bottle bill or a bag ban accompanying the universal recycling law. So the bottle bill in the US, depending on where you are, is something that it has proved very difficult to pass. And by that I mean bills that allow for anywhere between a 5 to 15 cent redemption fee if you bring the bottle to a recycling facility. You get that money back, and those have been really, really heavily opposed by industry and successfully, unfortunately. But both that and a statewide bag ban were passed in 2019, which is great. And the bag ban law is the most sweeping one in the country right now, and it bans stores and restaurants from providing single-use plastics to customers and requires charging 10 cents or more for paper bags, and also bans retailers from single-use coffee cups, takeout containers, and other food containers that are made from polystyrene or styrofoam, both of which are huge victories. One of the biggest challenges has been the fact that it's very easy not to comply with the universal recycling law in more rural areas. There just aren't the people in place to ensure in places that are not as urban that folks actually are complying. So as you can see from this photo, it is not uncommon for folks, particularly in areas like the Northeast Kingdom, to just dump waste from their homes, and it doesn't get caught, and because there's just such a vast amount of space. And lots of places, another challenge has been that lots of places that only did trash pickup previously have had to retrofit trucks in order to take recycling. And they have had to do twice the amount of travel if they're hauling recyclables. So they've been able to generate quite a bit of opposition because people are worried that their taxes are going to go up as a result of the increased hauling. And an example of how this was done is one of the haulers actually went and flyered people's mailboxes and people's cars all along their route, and just with some very inflammatory information just about what the effects of that could be on folks' taxes. So that's definitely been an issue. but we're hopeful that as folks continue to see the benefits, that they'll be encouraged to comply more. Another challenge has been the fact that there's been a lot of reliance on small businesses to grow very quickly. There was a robust composting industry in Vermont prior to the law being implemented, but the amount of volume that the new requirements have created has meant that it's been difficult for businesses. So some businesses have actually failed, and there have been some issues as well, just in terms of contamination of composting. So one of the headlines that's here is about the fact that there was herbicide that was found in composting, and that had implications for how obviously that material could be used. I actually forgot to take the bin wars piece of this out, but there's a lot of confusion among folks when things aren't clearly labeled in terms of just what goes in which bin, and how to ensure that we're not actually contaminating some of the things that like the recyclables that we know we need to have the highest quality in order for those to be used. So where we are now, there was a 1-year delay on rolling out the universal piece of things. And so, for example, changes were made to both the solid waste and bottle bill laws. For example, transfer stations are allowed to charge a separate fee for recyclables, and leaf and yard waste is only picked up in the summer. But the good news is that haulers now have to accept food waste, and there is a ban on food waste in landfills and incinerators that will go into effect in 2020. And any unclaimed bottle bill deposits are now going to a fund for clean water in the state. It used to just go back to the grocery stores. So that's a huge victory. And so the big picture moving forward is to try to prioritize some of these other more difficult forms of waste, like construction and demolition and hazardous wastes. And then there's also been discussion around prioritizing textiles, because we know that those can be repurposed and reused. And one of the other big issues, as you can see from this photo, in Vermont, again, because it is so rural, is that there are lots and lots and lots of tires that end up in people's waste. So the average person in Vermont goes through 4 tires a year, which is quite high. So they're starting to look at non-recyclable or compostable materials that are problems and show up in our trash. So really quickly, I'm just going to switch gears and talk about Zero Waste Boston, which is a collaboration of worker, youth, community, and environmental groups that are working in Boston to reduce waste and advance green jobs for the community. And we're working towards building a zero waste system in Boston that not only reduces pollution from incinerators and landfills, but that also is good for the economy, particularly in traditionally disenfranchised Boston communities. And so the main goals of the campaign were to guarantee workers a living wage and safe working conditions in the city's waste and recycling facilities. And the main way to do that in Boston is through the contracts that the haulers and recycling companies have with the city. We also work toward creating policies and programs that support local businesses and good green jobs for Boston residents in zero waste industries, and then also that improve public health and reduce climate pollution. And the goal is to move Boston to zero waste by 2040, which has been a steep task. the city last year finally did go through a zero waste planning process. And that was the result of the 10-year campaign by the coalition. And we have focused very much on the fact that recycling workers right now are excluded from the living wage ordinance, which, just to give context, is the living wage in Boston right now is somewhere between $13 and $15. The minimum wage is a little over $8 an hour. So we're trying to make sure that folks are being paid. A living wage, cost of living in Boston are very, very high, and the majority of the workers who are actually sorting these recyclables are working under really difficult and dirty conditions, and are often immigrants, undocumented people, and temp workers. So they're at high risk in lots of different ways. So the latest request for bids for the recycling contract did include the requirement that the bidder comply with the living wage ordinance, which is a huge step forward, but that has not been finalized yet. So we're waiting for the release of the final recommendations from the Zero Waste Advisory Committee, and the draft included things like pay as you throw and movement toward curbside composting. So we're hopeful that the city is moving in the right direction, but we're not backing down anytime soon. So I think that's it from me. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and everyone. We do have a few questions. We can address them here. They were answered, but I think we can, if you don't mind, we can share the one. So one question was from Anna. She was asking, how did you get Ljubljana to commit to becoming a zero waste city? Did it start with policy of model or a model implementation, and does it have a social inclusion as part of the model? And I would actually, I'm sorry, answer that you wrote all these long questions, but let me ask you to at least read it for others. And I also want to extend the question to others, like specifically in terms of what is the point of entry for city officials to start a zero waste model in your experience? What is it that captures the attention of city officials to implement a zero waste plan? So would you like to read your answer?
Yeah. Well, the case of Ljubljana was a one of a kind one, because it's a national capital, and as you understand, whatever happens in a national capital has got a huge impact also on national strategies. So that was not an easy fight, of course, as you understand. But basically in early 2014, we had some huge campaigning in Slovenia. I went myself there quite a few times for public events, for meeting the mayor, for meeting the advisors. We singled out who were the best persons to be targeted and to share evidence we had on cities of comparable size. Of course, once you have to address a city totaling hundreds, thousands of people, you have to provide evidence that this is already working in a city which is comparable from the demographic standpoint. We already had Parma, for instance. But basically, one of the main drivers for zero waste programs for the moment in Europe, as I already told you, is the fact that mayors know they will save money. Because in Europe, disposal has been made hell expensive by the landfill directive. The landfill directive includes 30 years of financial liability for the landfill owner after the landfill is shut down, and also an obligation on pretreatment. And this makes landfilling very expensive. Incineration, I don't have to tell you, it's the most expensive waste management option. And therefore, it's easy for us to show evidence to mayors that by adopting a zero waste program, they will save money, they will transfer less costs to the taxpayers. Of course, that's the main driver, but as well, the environmental sustainability and the societal implications, such as new jobs which are getting created are very, very attractive for the mayors and all the decision makers.
Thank you, Enzo. Miko, Sofia, do you have any insights in your experience of what has been the driver for city officials to implement zero waste plans?
Yeah, actually, in the case of San Fernando, for example, so first you really have to deal with a dilemma where the city is facing a landfill or a dump site that's about to be closed, and that in a way provides an entry point for Gaia and its members to provide or offer an intervention which is zero waste. And that's also the time you can show some evidence, especially on the economic benefits of trying to recover as much material as possible through composting and recycling, and yeah, and other socioeconomic benefits. In their case, actually, local officials would actually be concerned about waste being an electoral issue. So if they try introducing a different system that's in a way inconvenient for a lot of their citizens, they might lose their votes. But in the case of San Fernando, the opposite happened. So after introducing a zero waste program, the mayor and the local officials that supported this program actually received more votes in the next election. So at least that experience helps, that local officials, mayors should not be afraid to take on waste at something that might be controversial initially, but it's something very beneficial to their residents in the long run.
Thank you, Miko. Sofia, do you want to add anything?
I think in Boston, it's sort of been two things. I mean, one of the things is the fact that the city sees itself as a leader in terms of the broader climate movement and in fighting climate change, and so we know that this is a huge piece of the puzzle in terms of that. You know, getting to zero waste will definitely help to reduce our emissions in terms of climate change, and I think it is to some extent the economics, but that gets complicated in the U.S. Again, with the living wage issue that I was talking about, with these companies have such a stranglehold on our waste systems that you know, there's a lot of concern about costs going up even a little bit for taxpayers. So I would say, yeah, it's the climate piece, and it's also, I think for Boston, it's a little bit of you know, wanting to keep up with other places like San Francisco and with Austin and some of the other cities that have gone this route in the U.S. And really just trying to stay ahead of the curve in terms of where things are politically.
Thank you very much. We have another question by Paolo Moore. He said, in large cities such as in North America, for example, a common response to concepts such as source separation with pay-as-you-throw systems is that it's not viable to have that level of individual accountability in large urban settings and high occupancy in high-rise buildings, both residential and commercial. So he's asking whether there's any best practice model scheme supporting evidence for implementing source separation coupled with pay-as-you-throw in this context. And Enzo, can you take that?
Yeah, thanks, Paolo. I know Paolo, by the way. Yeah, very intriguing question. Now, first of all, the question is covering both separate collection and pay-as-you-throw. Let me top up what I already shared during my presentation, saying that we usually consider curbside collection at the doorstep, including the organics, as the real springboard towards the zero waste. With curbside collection, even without pay-as-you-throw systems, you may go up to 60, 70, 80% separate collection, depending on different situations and how many organics do you have in your municipal solid waste. Then with the implementation of pay-as-you-throw systems, you have got the next leap towards zero waste, because it typically halves residual waste. So if you were at 60%, you tend to go towards 80%. If you were at 70%, you would tend to go towards 85 and something like that. Of course, this is on the average and roughly, very roughly. However, we have got already, if there are concerns about that, but we have got already living examples in many cities that curbside collection and pay-as-you-throw are working. We have got Parma, we have got Ljubljana itself. Milan has no pay-as-you-throw yet, but there are already plans to have it implemented next year on 100% of the population. There's one thing I would like to share with you in this respect, since typically pay-as-you-throw is based on the number of set-outs of residual waste. You reward or penalize how frequently you deliver your residual waste. So it's basically a volume-based way of rewarding or penalizing the single households, the single taxpayers. Consider that in well-working, well-designed and well-working zero waste programs, we have got households which are delivering their residual waste every other month. So basically, it's not like having hundreds or thousands bags in front of one high-rise building, because the families which will be delivering on one collection round their residual waste will be a minor percentage of the total number of households. So you will still have a manageable and totally workable system in this respect.
Thank you very much, Enzo. And there was another question that was answered in the chat by Miko, but I want to highlight because I think it's maybe applicable to others, which was about how to implement decentralized waste management systems in places where that lack land, like space of land. So the question was how do you arrange the land for decentralized systems in places like the Philippines or India, who may have problems with land capacity?
Yeah, thanks, Ceci. So for, as I've mentioned in the chat box, so local governments are encouraged to be creative in looking for spaces, especially those in the urban areas. I've seen some examples in the Philippines and also in Indonesia, where they use a portion of their sidewalks as composting areas. In Bandung, for example, they installed some composting boxes inside a park. So somehow they were able to provide that space for recreation, and at the same time people can actually see where their organic waste go by visiting this public space. In Tacloban, in the Philippines, there are some barangays or villages that they don't have space, so they decided just to build a clustered MRF or facility. So there's a setup where 3 or 4 barangays or villages are sharing one MRF, so that just to save on space. And other options could be if you have private sector partners or institutions like schools or churches who have maybe extra space that they can lend, then that's also a good option.
Thank you, Miko. Does Enzo or Sophia, do you want to add anything about? Okay. So I think that's it for the questions, and I want to, yes, Enzo.
Just to add that you may download from the Zero Waste Europe website, you may download free of charge plenty of case histories. We did reports on case histories, and they may be downloaded free of charge. One of those is the city of Besançon, where they have got an organics waste management program just by means of community composting. It's not the only example, because we have got the city of Zurich in Switzerland, we have got Pontevedra in Spain, but we already issued a report on Besançon. And if I may say something more, we know in promoting zero waste programs that sometimes when discussing it with the decision makers, you will be challenged by the traditional science, the traditional knowledge. Because there will be academics out there or decision makers telling you, yeah, but tell me about climate change implications of zero waste programs, tell me about environmental sustainability, tell me about, we have got evidence about that. Of course, we know we need to work on the ground with boots on the ground in order to implement local zero waste schemes, but also we needed to increase the scientific profile of our zero waste proposal. This is why we established the Zero Waste Europe Scientific Committee, and also we are cooperating with ZWIA, the Zero Waste International Alliance, and I feel blessed to be able to cooperate with Gaia in order to provide the scientific insights in the zero waste programs whenever need be. But feel confident, we are always ready to help. So whenever you need any scientific support, we will be there to help. And I feel blessed by that.
Thank you very much, Enzo, for that. And we will be sending everyone a list of resources that you can consult, including the case studies that we have and a few documents and materials that may be useful to you to promote zero waste. So to finalize, I just want to invite you to our next webinar, which is going to be on June 19th, so a week from now, and it's going to be about community composting. It's at the same hour as today, and we will have experiences from Ghana, from India, and from the United States. So you can connect to our next webinar. And I want to thank all the speakers today. We had a wonderful panel today. I don't know if you want to add anything, mention anything to the audience.
Just to say I enjoyed it very much, a great webinar. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you, Ceci and Gemma, and thanks everyone for being here.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. See you next week.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining, and thank you for all the very interesting and good questions raised and the information shared. So we'll see each other in the next webinar. Thanks.